Hey, what's up? This last college weekend was insane. We haven't seen something like this since 2007 when every number 2 and number 1 team was just getting knocked off. We thought this was going to be a very slow weekend. There wasn't any marquee matchups that really kind of headlined anything, right? Like College Game Day went to Cal versus Miami. No shade to them, but at the same time, it's not something that's really drawing in a large crowd. But what I tell you, this is one of the craziest college football weekends we can imagine. Man, you can never write anything off. First, we're going to talk about is Alabama losing to Vanderbilt. First and foremost, Alabama was number 1. They just beat Georgia last week, riding that high of being the best team in the country, right? Like they started off hot against Georgia and then almost lost the game, but we still understood that was still Alabama. Coming into this Vanderbilt game, this is what we call a trap game, right? Because you're riding that high. Vanderbilt knows that Alabama's feeling themselves right now. New head coach Kalen DeBoer has to find a way to get his team to not overlook a team like this, but they didn't. Vanderbilt came in all cylinders, playing great on defense. They had the time of possession battle. I think it was between 41 minutes at Vanderbilt and under 20 minutes for Alabama. That just kind of shows a dominance of we're going to keep the ball away from your best players. Because at the end of the day, Alabama was always in keep-up mode. Alabama never led in that game. If you would have told somebody 10 years ago Alabama would never lead against Vanderbilt, they would not believe you. They wouldn't believe you because Vanderbilt has historically been not the greatest football team in the SEC, especially against Alabama. Alabama has won 23 straight games against Vanderbilt. And the last time Vanderbilt beat Alabama was, I think, early 1970s. That's just insane, especially a number 1 team, Alabama. This is almost as bad as Nick Saban losing to Louisiana Monroe in his first year. But hey, growing pains. But I can't say enough about how Vanderbilt played. They came with a chip on their shoulders, and they did what they needed to do, which was take out the Goliath, and they were David. Next we have is Texas A&M beating Missouri soundingly 41-10. That game right there of itself was a surprising matter because Missouri is the top 10 team in the country. They were having a high-powered offense. We understood this was going to be a good game, but this was a one-sided game. It was lopsided. It wasn't even close. This is one of those games that A&M, you could do no wrong. They were scoring from the beginning. Connor Weidman got the start, which was controversial if you think about it. Because he hasn't been playing well. He's been battling out injuries, and their backup Reed was doing a pretty good job. I thought they were going to ride him the rest of the season, but you give Connor Weidman a start. Shout out Mike Elko for that because that was a game decision move that could have went either one of 2 ways, right? But he made that decision, which took them over the top. Connor Weidman played great. He played great, but that whole Texas A&M team played amazing. Shout out to Moss. He was really one of the biggest factors in that game, rushing for almost 200 yards, and then obviously carrying the load for that team. Defense played lights out, shutting out Missouri, who is a high-powered octane offense. This 10 points is the lowest amount of points they scored and lowest yardage they had since 2022. 2 years. 2 years. You're telling me that a Notre Dame that came in and beat Texas A&M to almost barely beat Bowling Green is handing big L's like this to Missouri? Man, that's college football for you. But shout out to Texas A&M. They got a huge boost in the AP rating this year, and they were A&M is 5-1 now, leading the SEC. Who would have thought? Now we want to talk about is Boise State and their running back, Ginty. He is playing out of his mind. Boise State is a top 25 team in the country, and we already know how good that program has been over the last decades. But this team right now and their running back is substantial. Rushing for over 180 yards on 13 carries. That's almost 10 yards a clip every time he touches the ball. Guys playing out otherworldly at this point. Already eclipsing 1,000 yards in 5 games and 13 touchdowns. This kind of just shows you at the level he's playing compared to everybody else. He's playing great. Boise State is understanding this is their bell cow. At this rate of how he's running, he's primed to hit 2,000 yards and essentially be a Heisman front runner, which I expect him to be. Because this team just keeps going the way they're doing, you should expect to see them in the college football playoffs. And I'm not somebody that a coach would want to play Boise State right now, the way they're playing, and historically how they've dominated top 25 Power 5 teams in the past. Ginty is coming along, and just from Boise State's historic run of great running backs, Jay Ajayi, Alexander Madison, Jeremy McNichols, Ginty is just following in those footsteps. I'm excited to see what he does, because right now Boise State is playing great and they're having the momentum behind them. If you would have thought this was a sleeper weekend, you thought wrong. This almost reminded me of a 2007 season when teams are just going down week in and week out. We had 4 top 25 teams lose this weekend. That's historic. Things like that just don't happen on any given weekend. They almost went down to 5 if Miami didn't pull it away from Cal. Things like that is just what make college football so amazing. Texas A&M goes in and beats a top 10 team in Missouri. Alabama, obviously the number 1 team, goes down to Vanderbilt, which was a surprise. Michigan loses to Washington. But at that point now, we understood Michigan wasn't really one of the best teams. Washington was the favorite in that game. Michigan's offense really needs to be tweaked, because right now they're looking pretty bad. They need a quarterback. The run game needs to show up. Donovan Edwards has not been the cover athlete that we thought, and that defense can only do so much to help that team. They need some help on the offense. And then last, you have Tennessee losing to Arkansas. Like, things like that just don't happen on any given weekend all at one time. But it happened this last weekend, and it's so crazy to see how the rankings have shaken up in over a week when a lot of teams didn't even play. But now, just looking forward to next week, here are some of my games I'm definitely excited to watch. I'm definitely excited to watch the Red River rivalry, Texas versus Oklahoma, neutral site game in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl. But guess what? It's an SEC game now. This is for the SEC. This is towards the SEC. Texas is coming off of high. They're right now the number 1 team in the country. You get your best quarterback back. He's fully healthy. He's motivated to go prove the doubters wrong. They're thinking that Arch should lead this team. Arch is a good QB, but let's slow our roll. Let's not put him over the 3-year starter, former number 1 quarterback, former number 1 player in the country out of high school, Quinn Ewers. I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. He's going to have a fire lit up his ass, and he's ready to go show the doubters wrong, because I think this is his team, and he's ready to show that and take Texas back to the promised land. Then we have is Ohio State versus Oregon. This game has been circled on the calendar for both teams, right? Because at this point now, we understand Oregon. They have Dylan Gabriel. They have all this talent. They're coming into the Big Ten. This is the matchup everybody's wanting to see. How good can these two teams be? Oregon hasn't played the greatest start into that. Oregon haven't. They're ready to kind of show that they're the dominant team and they're a force to be reckoned with. Don't go against Dylan Gabriel. But Ohio State, they just came off an impressive win against Iowa, and that was one of their only real true tests last week. But let's see how good this team can. Will Howard take this team, and Jeremiah Smith and Mecca Buka really do big things like they say they could? It's time for them to get over that hump. I know Ryan Day's excited. Michigan is gone. Jim Harbaugh's gone. It's his time to take over the Big Ten, finally win it again, and to finally get his team back to prominence, because he hasn't got. And last but not least, we're going to talk about Colorado versus Kansas State. This is going to be Colorado's biggest test of the year. I truly believe a 4-1 Colorado right now is playing great. They can make a statement to the country. They're not a fluke. This is not a team that people should take lightly if they come and beat Kansas State and reclaim that swagger that they once had last year. Because I think Colorado right now is playing great. They've already won 4 games. Say anything that you want about Dion, but he's got this team already back to how many more games they won last year. And anything after this now is just add-ons. But I think this team is going to be really, really good. I'm excited to watch Shador, and I'm excited to watch Travis Hunter. I'm excited to watch all these other players, star-studded players around them, really make a name for themselves, and Coach Prime get them back to the college football playoffs. Let's go. You let me know what games you're excited to watch. You let me know what your thoughts and expectations were the last weekend. Was it pandemonium? Did it remind you of 2007? And is this the reason why we love college football?